Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Ryan with From Corners Unknown. I hope you're all doing well. A number of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of speaking with Andrew Stevens, an artist, designer, and experimental ambient musician based in Wichita, Kansas. I first learned of Andrew's music endeavors under the name of Scattered Lodges just about a year ago when he reached out to me with his debut EP, his debut cluster of songs titled Asymmetric Soup. And since that album's release, he's put out a couple really great follow-up single tracks. So in this conversation, I talk with Andrew about his upbringing with respect to art, how he got into design, and we dive a bit deeper into the background of Scattered Lodges and what the project represents for Andrew. We also talk a bit about the local scene and how there's kind of been this swell of pride in the Wichita, Kansas area. Beyond that, I sincerely hope you enjoyed this conversation. Right when we start talking, we are talking about one of Andrew's close friends, Kyle, whom he works with quite closely on some of his projects. Just to give you a clarifying bit, and just after this introduction, I will play Susurrus, Andrew's latest track as Scattered Lodges, for you. And at the very end of this conversation, I'll close it out with his longer and really beautiful track titled Alpine Chorus. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and thank you so much for listening, and thank you for any and all support you can show Andrew and Scattered Lodges. And you guys have been working together on like you guys have been kind of like you do have your music project Ills or you did have that project. I don't know if that's still active or not, but you guys work together in a lot of respects, right?
Yeah, we went to high school together. That's where we met, and I'd say like he started making music about the same time that I started getting into design
Oh,
and
okay.
and art and stuff. And so they've been kind of parallel paths.
I see.
And so before I really knew what design was, and before I wanted to go to school for it and stuff, I had like a pirated copy of Photoshop, and I would do little like logos for his music project, little graphics and stuff like that. And so I was kind of learning the ropes
Sure.
while he was like starting up his music project. So we've just kind of been going down the same path together. And I've done all of his art and stuff, but
I
it
see.
was only a few years ago that we actually made music together. Yeah.
Okay.
Ills is, we did that project, and I mean, it's not really like over or anything. It's just kind of been on hiatus
Okay. Sure.
for a while.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if it came back, just kind of at any point.
Yeah. 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 So you went to school for design, like that was this was like post high school. This is like a college thing for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I realized like right at the end of high school, that's what I wanted to go to school for.
And what was
So I,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
go ahead.
No, like so yeah, what was your like what about like what fascinated you about design? Just like was it the dynamic of working with people and trying to like get kind of like ideas out of people's heads and like into like creating something that people are like imagining in a way? I because I don't draw or I don't produce anything artistic per se.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's especially with design, it's usually somebody else's idea or what they do, and you're helping them kind of realize it in a
Yeah,
way. So I think that's what is appealing to me, the kind of commercial side to it.
sure.
It's a little bit more uh, problem solving oriented than
Yeah,
just like fine arts.
sure. Yeah, you're not just creating some abstract piece and then putting it out. Like you're kind of helping somebody whittle away at. I
Yeah, you're kind of helping someone like express what they do.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, and
And
it's pretty rewarding when you can do that successfully.
yeah, and you've been how long have you been doing that stuff for the design? Because I should know how old you are, but I don't
Oh,
think I'm aware.
I've been doing it professionally since 2008, so for 10 years.
Mm, okay,
I graduated high school in 2002.
okay.
Graduated college in 2008, and so I've been doing it ever since professionally. Yeah, but there was a period from like probably around 2000 to 2008 before I was officially out of school where I always kind of dabbled in it and had picked it
Yeah,
up and was doing it on my own.
sure. And what are some of your like how have your how has it evolved for you? Are there specific, you said you were doing like some little designs for Kyle early on when he was doing
Hmm.
his music stuff, but how has it evolved for you over time? Like, so you started with more music oriented stuff, but how did it shift from there going forward?
Yeah, so yeah, I did start kind of music oriented,
Uh huh.
but and that's always been sort of it's been ongoing. But like once I got into school and got like a kind of a real job, I've
Hmm.
worked like in a bank
Hmm.
as an in-house designer. I did that
Oh,
for a couple of years, and then I went to an advertising agency.
huh.
So it's been kind of this more corporate
I see.
level, but
Sure.
I've always had what I like to do on the side.
And is
So
that
there's a nice balance.
okay? And is that's like your stable current job doing like the more corporate stuff?
Yeah, so I worked at an ad agency for 5 years, and the past year and a half about I've been at a consulting firm,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
we make web applications for banks and credit unions.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
I'm the creative director at that place. Um, so that's kind of like, it doesn't really, pay the bills to do album art and gig posters and stuff like that, even though
Sure.
that would have always been kind of the dream.
Yeah, of
But
course. Of course.
so it's a nice balance. Like, I do what I do during the day, and I do like that. But then I have, my freelance work that is kind of my passion.
Yeah, you kind of have a little more, would it be fair to say, like more freedom to kind of pick and choose who you work with or what kind of projects interest you most?
Yeah, and it's usually stuff that's more oriented like to my actual lifestyle.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
And how has it been doing like you said it was web design or kind of like designed for credit unions? Like how does that work? Is it just kind of like getting like logos and emblems and like fonts and stuff? I don't know the right way to phrase that
Well,
question.
actually, we build web applications,
Mm, mm.
and we have two. So there's like one that does performance management, which is like performance reviews and stuff,
Oh,
and then there's one that's salary administration, which helps banks build budgets and stuff like that.
okay.
So we have an internal brand at the company, and we build these apps, and basically banks and credit unions subscribe
Okay.
and use our apps.
Okay. And when you say like you're doing like the creative stuff, is it almost like data visualization and stuff like that? Or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
oh,
Some of that. So as creative director, my time split like between working on our apps, doing UI and UX stuff, and
okay.
then also like internal branding just for the company. So if we need brochures or if we need a new website
Oh,
or whatever. So I kind of have my hand in a lot of different things here.
that sounds pretty
We,
interesting. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
it's very interesting. I have a big team of developers that I work with. So yeah, it's nice. I really like it.
And that's kind of a process of you have ideas and stuff and they kind of help you realize it in some way like on the computer or on the web applications.
Yeah, so it goes both ways there. So if they need, a particular feature in our app, I
Mhm.
will design it and I'll work out how it looks and how it works, and then I'll go
Huh.
back and forth with the developers, and they'll sort of build it and realize it.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I had no idea that was something you did outside of. I thought you were just doing like pure freelancing stuff most of the
Nope.
time. Interesting. Okay.
That's probably the goal one day, is to be able to do that. But
Just freelance exclusively and kind of
yeah,
subsist on that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, shoot. So how about getting more into the music stuff? Like, could
sure.
you take me back to before we get into Scattered Lodges specifically? Like, what were some of the first, like some of your first loves in music? Like some of the first things that really spoke to you and like got you into music and kind of compelled you to, kind of want to like got you into being like just thinking about producing music yourself.
Sure. So I don't really have much of a formal background in
Mm,
music. Not a lot of training or anything like that, but I've always been like an avid consumer of music. It's always
sure.
been one of the most important things to me, as far back as I can remember. So like when I was a kid, I really liked hip hop, and I liked a lot of metal,
Oh,
and
cool.
I'm in my 30s, so I've been through all kinds of phases at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I've always really liked just more intense music resonated with me.
And is that in the hemisphere of metal or is it even like electronic industrial stuff or like what?
Yeah, I think just in general, like even
Okay.
with hip hop, like I listened to a lot of like West Coast hip hop when I was a kid and stuff like that.
Okay.
Just music that had a bite to it
Sure.
has
Sure.
always resonated with me.
Okay.
Um, so I've always kind of dabbled in producing music,
Hmm.
and for years I would make stuff and never really put it out. It was always just kind of a thing I did for myself.
Okay.
Um, I've always had a lot of friends that were in bands or made music. So I've always kind of been like right there on the edge of it, but
Hmm.
never really took the leap into making it up until probably a few years ago, where I felt comfortable, putting it out.
Okay. Okay. And just to sate my curiosity, what kind of do you listen to metal anymore, or what were some of the bands you were into back then?
Yeah, I do listen to a lot of metal. I've always been a fan of Slayer. Um, I've always been a really big fan of like hardcore
Oh, nice.
too.
Okay, cool.
Uh, so bands like Converge
Oh yeah,
are
yeah,
big
yeah.
for me.
Yeah, I
Um,
love them.
yeah. So it's I don't know. It's always kind of ebbed and flowed, but metal and hardcore and stuff has been there all along. When I was in college is when I really started going to a lot of smaller like hardcore shows and stuff like
Sure,
that.
sure.
Um,
And is there a scene up for that kind of stuff in Wichita? Like, is there like a slew of bands in that genre, or just like a big music scene there in general?
yeah, there's a pretty big music scene.
Okay.
Right now, uh, it's really eclectic. There's a lot
Hmm.
going on. Um, so I don't really go to a lot of those like smaller shows like I used to.
Yeah, yeah.
That scene used to be quite a bit bigger.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people kind of grew up and moved on from it in a way.
Sure,
But
sure.
there's a new wave of really young bands here that's
Hmm.
exciting to see, and they're more like a lot of punk bands, a lot of just kind of indie bands.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, it's kind of getting to the point where it's hard to really define a lot of bands around here, which is probably
Yeah.
like a natural evolution.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That it's interesting that you say that too, because that's something as I've been talking with folks and kind of learning about people from different corners of the world and just chatting with folks. It's like kind of the way of defining music by like genre or anything that seems to just get more and more complicated, and I'm trying to think of ways to just like discard it entirely, because it's almost like you can't call a single band like as any genre anymore, because there's just so much crossover going on.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that's a great thing. I mean,
yeah,
it's
I
it's
agree.
almost boring if someone describes a band as like metal or
Yes,
hardcore or
yeah,
something. It's like that's not terribly interesting
no, for sure.
anymore.
Yeah, it kind of.
Even though they're still really good bands, like you know, really locked down to one genre, but
Mhm.
more and more, just like with probably anything in the world, like you've got to sort of carve out your own niche.
Yep, yep. Just find a way to stand out from everybody else, and kind of like that. Yeah, just kind of that underbelly of that genre or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's why bands like Converge are still around because
yes.
I mean I'll give you $100 if you can find one thing to pin them to. You just
Yeah,
can't do it.
yeah. No, and I'm glad that you like them, because they're definitely one of my favorite bands, and just every release they put out, it always just floors me how much they experiment, or they kind of tweak their sound and their vocalization styles, and
Yeah,
just yeah, it's pretty amazing just how much variation they can inject into their sound. And they've been around for shit like what, 20 years or
yeah, something like
longer.
that.
Yeah, and like they're
And
still going. Yeah.
e- everything they do is tasteful too.
Yes, yes.
There are some bands that obviously try too hard to do something different, and
Yeah,
it's really off-putting. But you can
yeah,
find like gyms every once in a while. It's like anything they do is going to be gold.
yeah, for sure. And how's your like, since you're older than me, I'm curious about how have your tastes changed over the years? Have you kind of fallen into a particular niche of music that you really dig, and you kind of just listen to that? Like like have you become more, you know, like I don't want to say conservative, but like is there like more of a, like, have you become more specific in what you listen to, like choosing one genre over another, or
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's
okay,
the opposite. So I mean, I've always been such a big music fan that I'm just really open
yeah,
in general. And so I've gone through plenty of phases where I
Yeah.
listen to a lot of electronic music or a lot of hardcore metal or hip hop or something. And I think the older I get and the more time passes, I still like a little bit of everything, and it's
Yeah.
just like the cream rises to the top in a way
Hmm.
where like you dive into a certain genre and maybe you spend a few years in it, and then when you come out of it, you're left with the really good stuff that sticks with you.
Yes. Yep. 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 No, definitely. So, so I guess getting more into your project. So, Scattered Lodges. So,
Yeah,
what was the impetus for creating that project? And I'm also curious just about the name you selected for it as well.
sure. Scattered Lodges is the uh, translation of Wichita, which is a city I live in.
Oh,
Um,
Jesus!
it, it,
I should have figured that out.
it, it's a Native American word.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
Huh. Huh.
So there's been a really big like boom and pride for this city over the past few years,
Oh, really?
and yeah, it's been a huge thing where like our flag has become really big and iconic, even though it's been around since probably gonna get this wrong, like the 30s or something like that.
Okay. Huh.
So the name kind of comes out of that. It's a little bit esoteric. It's not super well known, but I always thought it was just a really cool
Yeah.
sounding name, and it's got a lot of history in it. Um, so that's kind of where I picked it. Um,
Interesting. Okay.
the project itself started like technically probably at the end of 2016. I have some friends in a post rock band here called Standing in the Color,
Hmm.
and they were doing a remix album. And a couple of my best friends are in the band,
Hmm.
and they asked me to contribute. So I picked the song and remixed it, and kind of realized at the end that I don't really have any sort of name to put on this or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I was pretty happy with what I did, and it kind of made me think, well, maybe I should pursue this just a little bit more.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting. Huh.
yeah, and so I better kind of pick a name and sort of try and make it some sort of official entity, and that's how the project actually started.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the so so I guess going to your first release, so you had Asymmetric Soup. That's more of an EP, right? That's not a it's been a little bit since I looked at the length of that.
Yeah, it's 6 tracks and just I think just under half an hour. So
Okay.
yeah, it's probably technically an
An
EP
EP.
depending on who defines that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So what was the how was that producing that like the because I listened back to it a few times over the last couple days, and I really love what like just all the different sounds and styles. I mean, was the name you
Thanks.
selected for it? Was it kind of a way to capture just a bunch of different experiments and sounds in your head that you wanted to put out?
In a way, yeah. Uh, I chose that name because it has a lot to do with what happened right after the Big Bang, where there was just enough kind of stuff after the Big Bang to sort of make everything come to. Um, and I guess I likened it a little bit to finally deciding that the scale was going to tip and I was going to make music and actually put it out and make it a real thing.
I see.
So
Okay.
that's where the name comes from.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. And what was the so I guess just like with respect to like the experimentation and such, like what was the shoot, how do I ask that? Like yeah, like it's such an interesting album to listen to in retrospect. Just the just kind of like the ambience and the different synth movements and such. Like what was
Let me try to answer that, I guess. Um, that all just I sort of just let it come.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are things in those tracks I think that are like common threads,
Yeah.
uh, hopefully that kind of
Yeah.
tie everything together. But then there's quite a bit surrounding that that's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit different and kind of veers off into different directions. And so um, the songs as a collection, I guess I hoped did have like a common thread that
Yeah.
maybe you know touched on areas where like the project could go.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
it was kind of a jumping off point.
Okay. Okay. And what was the yeah, and then after you released that, you've had two singles drop, and I found them to be quite different, relatively speaking, to Asymmetric Soup.
Yeah,
Kind of like so like the Alpine chorus, I really liked kind of the little guitar movement or like the little melody that was sprinkled in there, or at least or maybe it was just a synth guitar. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. It's just a synth, but
Okay.
yeah, I think in maybe it's just more intuitive and less intentional,
Mm-hmm.
but that just kind of came out of some experimentation from Asymmetric Soup.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so I don't. The project's still new to me and
Yeah.
not super defined on what it is or where it's going, but like hopefully from release to release, even if it's just like a couple songs to one song, there's some sort of thread that maybe like the things that come before it inform it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, but I think there are probably some ideas in the first release that will be abandoned,
I
and
see.
then some ideas within it that will kind of stick and
Okay.
be a main core to the project. So it's kind of just a big experiment.
Yeah, yeah. And what's your like? What do you have an inkling as to where you want to push this project? Because if I were to kind of analyze this with respect to just like if I were to say dark ambient, which I know it really isn't, but it kind of has tendrils of that sound in some of the songs. But like,
Yeah.
where do you plan? Do you have any inkling as to where you're thinking of pushing it? Are there like certain sounds that you really like that you haven't been able to fully develop yet?
I So I guess in my mind, where it's going is hopefully more middle of the road between something really dark and
Hmm.
something on the lighter side. I guess for me, it's a little bit uncomfortable if something's getting too dark
Sure.
or getting too light, like too pretty. So hopefully, anything I'm working on now is sort of like writing a line between those two
Okay.
and
Okay.
kind of dipping in and out a little bit.
I see. I see. And are you, is there, what do you have plans over the next, I guess this year? It still blows my mind that Asymmetric Soup came out April 2017. I feel like I wrote about it way long ago. I don't know why, but
Yeah,
do you have plans this year to put out any new, like an LP or an EP or a collection of songs or anything like that?
yeah. Ideally, I would like to put out an LP, something a little bit longer and more realized. So that's the plan for this year.
Okay.
I've got stuff sitting around here and there, and um, I just kind of need to take a look at it and pick a direction
Sure.
and try and make it a little bit more fully formed.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the plan, and hopefully, what comes out next will be kind of an amalgamation of what I've put out so far.
Okay. Okay. And what is the is there like something specific you want, like when folks or just people listen to your music in general, is there a certain feeling you want to evoke in people like when they listen to your tracks?
I guess I would hope that it's just something that people can get lost in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, uh, I think I tend a little bit towards subtlety, and so I don't want it to be too in your face.
Sure.
Um, and that's kind of how the music I've put out so far has been made. A lot of the time, I'll set up loops and just
Hmm.
let them loop while I'm working or something. Um,
Oh, okay.
and I'll try not to pay attention to it. And if I
Okay.
find myself kind of getting lost in it a little bit, then I'll think maybe it's an idea that I can flesh out a little bit.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. Okay. Yeah, that was something I was going to ask a bit more about, and you kind of already highlighted it. Just the your compositional approach, or if there was a way, how you begin writing songs, or if there's like a yeah, like how you usually go about creating a song from start to finish.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that. It's just kind of starting, just finding a starting point,
Okay,
and hopefully that goes somewhere.
for sure.
Really,
Okay.
um, I think there's a Brian Eno quote about ambient music, and it's
Hmm.
something like, uh, like good ambient music is just as interesting as it is boring." And
Okay.
that's something that's always kind of been in the back of my mind, and that informs what I make a little bit.
I see. And okay.
Yeah,
And are like beyond Brian Eno as well, are there specific artists that like really influence your sound or really compel you to try and create something in a similar vein or try and develop an idea further?
yeah. The biggest influence, and it's probably not recognizable at all, is Stars of the Lid.
Oh, never heard of those folks. I don't think.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, drony music. Um,
Where are they from?
and
Is it just one
um,
person?
no, it's two guys, and I'm not
Okay.
sure where they're from. I
Okay.
can't think of it right now. Um, but that's music for me that I listen to and just find myself completely lost in, and you kind of have
I
to,
see.
pull yourself back out of it a little bit,
Yeah.
um, which is the total opposite of more extreme music like metal or hardcore or punk or
Sure.
something like that, where like you're always right there with it.
Yeah, you're kind of like feeling the intensity and the aggravation that's coming through it as opposed to kind of
Yeah,
like drifting off into
yeah. You're totally in the moment with it, and then
sure.
there's the total opposite end of the spectrum where some of this other stuff exists. That's where um, I feel like I want to try and recreate that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And
so I would definitely check out Stars of the Lid. But I also listen to a lot of like post rock, a lot of
yeah.
instrumental stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
like Hammock or This Will Destroy You, Explosions in the Sky,
Oh,
and a
for
lot of that
sure.
stuff has really ambient, atmospheric aspects to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, how was the I guess going back to that one note you left also about kind of the name Scattered Lodges and as it relates to kind of the Native American people in that area. I was interested also kind of as you were talking about like that resurgence and pride. What was is there? I've never been to Wichita, but what's that? What could you explain that a bit more as well?
Sure. So most of my life growing up here, there the people here definitely have a lot of pride in where we're from, but it's never really been it's never been as visible as it is lately. And there's
Okay,
been just like a surge of people that want to like fly the flag of the city they're from and stuff like that. And I think like you're out near Portland, right?
yeah, I'm a couple hours south of it, but it's
Okay.
it's still not. I go up there every once in a while, so it's not too far.
Yeah. I think Portland has this thing where like there's Keep Portland Weird
Yeah.
and all
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
just all this stuff. Or like you can't really go into a shop or anything without finding, you know, some sort of memorabilia
Yeah, for sure.
about around the city.
For
And
sure.
Wichita's probably just a little bit behind some cities like that, but that's like the wave that's been coming through the past several years.
Do you know
We're
what?
like,
Yeah, yeah.
you can't go a few blocks here without seeing a Wichita flag somewhere, or um,
Huh.
just people really taking pride. And I think there's been like a big um, art and culture boom here that that's a part of.
Sure.
We're like, instead of tons of like house shows
Mm-hmm.
or shows at like an Eagles Lodge or something, they're moving out to more visible spaces where
Okay.
like our downtown now has a bar with like a marquee that puts the bands that are playing up, and
Oh,
that's a
interesting.
pretty new thing for Wichita, and
Really
people are just like really taking in this like boom of culture.
interesting. And do you know why that was it just some was it just a generation of folks that just started like trying to become more like visibly active in the area? Did you see like kind of the origin of that, or kind of like that little boom that kind of gave birth to it?
I mean, I've definitely seen it happening. It's I think it's just more like the arts moving out of like the underground more,
Okay.
and
Okay.
coming out and really kind of like taking over the city a little bit. Our city's not huge. It's like I don't know, 700,000 people or something.
It's way bigger
Um,
than where I live, but that still
yeah,
doesn't sound. That doesn't sound. It sounds like a little bit smaller than Portland, and
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, you can drive from one side to the other in 20 minutes. It's not
Oh, that's not bad.
huge, but
Okay,
our downtown isn't like a big, walkable, thriving downtown.
I
It's more
see.
like
I see.
a business district. But
Okay,
that's another part of the shift that's happening, where you're getting more music venues and more little shops that are selling, like really cool artwork, cool
I
prints,
see.
stuff like that.
I see.
Just kind of embracing the artists around here, and that's like visual arts, music. It's all kind of happening at once.
And has that kind of synchronized with an uptick in your like doing your freelance work? Like, have you been getting more frequent? Like, have you been seeing more people reach out to you and creating stuff as a result of this kind of this movement?
Yeah, I think I definitely have. Like,
Huh.
um, been doing more consistent like album covers,
Oh, nice.
gig posters. There's some lifestyle brands around here
Okay.
that are making like T-shirts and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like that whole thing affects all different kinds of people. Even someone like me.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, so I mean, it's been a really great thing. The only downside of it is probably being a little bit older now. Like it would have been great if I was,
Mid
younger
20s or early
when this
20s.
was happening. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I have a baby
Yeah.
and
I can't
have
imagine
a
how
full time
much.
job and stuff like that, and so
Yeah.
it's hard to go to all the shows now and all the gallery openings and stuff like that. But I'm so glad that the city has it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Is it something too, like with respect to your freelance stuff, like how much time do you usually carve out for that on like a weekly basis or a monthly basis? Has it been difficult to keep up with freelance, or like being able to do it as much as you'd like to?
Um, well, I mean, I have a typical sort of freelance life where it comes and goes. Like when it
Okay.
rains, it pours, and
Yep, of
then
course.
it dries up.
Yep.
So when I need to devote the time to doing it, I do it. But I always kind of know that there's going to be a balance. If I was working a full time job and then working, 5 or 6 hours a night on stuff, that would probably be unsustainable.
Yeah.
But it ebbs and flows enough to where it's manageable. But it
I
is
see.
hard to when you're working on freelance stuff, you're taking time away from your family or
Yeah.
other things you want to be doing. So you just have to be careful to strike a balance
Sure,
for
sure.
sure.
And yeah, and how has that been with having a child now? Has that made it more cumbersome as well, or just like a little like you just had to like figure out how to manage your time?
Yeah,
Like,
you just have to be a little bit more careful of how you manage your time. Like
okay,
when I'm working, my wife is more responsible for the baby and stuff like that. But she's also a freelancer. She's a freelance makeup artist.
oh,
So
cool,
um, it's kind of a give and take. When she's busy, I'm like at home with the baby, and vice
sure,
versa. So
sure,
it's good to be really busy. Sometimes it's kind of a necessary evil.
yeah, of course, of course. No, that's okay. No, that's interesting to hear though about kind of all that the resurgence of kind or not resurgence, but kind of like kind of an upheaval or kind of like a flourishing of the
Yeah,
arts in that area.
yeah. I mean, I can remember like probably mid 2000s seeing bands like Portugal the Man
Oh,
play
really?
a tiny Eagles Lodge
For real?
here.
Huh? Interesting.
And now they're like, I mean, they played some New Year's Eve show on like national television and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I'm sure that's a little bit more of a generational thing. Like there are probably small bands coming through here all the time that are going to go somewhere, but
Sure.
there's less of there's less of that kind of small stuff happening, and more like it's more accessible to everybody, which is a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't it doesn't have to be like as you said, it doesn't have to be some obscure thing where it's like in somebody's basement or some house show or something like that, right? It's like you have more of a you have more public facing venues for people to go check this stuff out and all that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the more you're invested in like the culture and the arts in like a city and a larger group, the less that you care about uh, like being part of a small scene that's like something you have some ownership in that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that stuff's all great until you realize that there's a lot more benefit in it.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I don't really know how to articulate that any better, but
Yeah, no worries. Is there like in your experience or of all the time you've been spending doing your freelance stuff, are there particular projects like what have you been learning? I guess this could be a way to like look at your freelance work as well as your music simultaneously, but like how have you evolved kind of as a professional freelancer as well as a musician through all your endeavors thus far? Like have you ended up like to this day, have you ended up somewhere a lot different than you saw yourself going toward when you first started doing this sort of stuff like earlier on?
yeah, for sure. I think it's there's a little bit more weight on making sure you're doing good work,
Yeah. Yeah.
because if you want it to be sustainable, you've got to think, a little bit outside the thing that got you into it. Like
Mhm.
if I'm making music for myself and then I put it out and some people pay attention to it, then there's like a different layer of how critical you should be or how critical that I am to it. And
I
you're
see.
kind of putting yourself out there.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have to make sure that, for better or worse, like you're doing the best you can,
Yep.
and that it has meaning and it's coming from like a genuine place.
Yeah, you're not just doing it for the hell of it, or you're just doing it because like you're trying to produce something that represents you as an individual, more or less.
Yeah, and when it comes to like design, it's just trying to think more about the business side of it,
Okay.
and realizing that the work you're doing for other people has real implications. Like if it's their album cover,
Hmm.
it's that thing has to go to work for them at some point, and so you have to make sure that like you're taking enough care to do it right.
Yeah, because your
For them,
name
and
is
the
going to
best
be
you can.
tied. Yeah, your name will be tied to it for
Yeah,
till the end of time, right? Or
yeah, and so will theirs.
yeah, yeah,
You hopefully that you're helping realize some vision they have, and you certainly don't want someone to hear that their album cover sucks. You know?
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting too. Like, have you? I haven't thought about this too much, but have you, as somebody that's produced artwork before, do you get feedback on that kind of stuff? Because I listen to a bunch of music, and some people seem to care about artwork a lot, but in metal music, I don't know. It's kind of hit and miss. Like, I don't see a lot of people pay too much attention to it. I know people do, but for you
Yeah.
personally, you know,
Thankfully, I've only really received positive feedback,
okay, okay,
which I appreciate so much, because I'm really critical of like of album covers and the stuff I do,
sure,
and I point
sure.
out things that I don't like all the time. Like,
In
I don't
your
know if
own
you've
work,
seen.
or like
No,
just in
not
work in
my work,
general?
just in general.
I see.
I don't know if you saw the cover for the new Perfect Circle album that
If
was
that really
released.
was if that really was the album artwork, I thought that was pretty cringy. But I will
Um,
reserve
you
my judgment.
you can pre-order that right now on their website. It's real, and the CD version has like another member of the band sort of in the same pose and stuff like that.
Like with the weird squid tentacle thing in his hands, and it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and it's like, if you look at that, the quality of the photography really is not great, and the Photoshop work is really not great, and it's like, man,
yeah. What the hell were they
you have
thinking?
yeah, and you're such a visible band, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And you put that
yeah.
stuff out there. So I'm super critical all the time, and thankfully, people haven't really been critical of my work yet.
But are you open to sort like are you open to like constructive criticism, like to better yourself? Like, is there like a metric you use to try and improve upon, past work, like
Yeah,
going forward?
I'm definitely open. I mean, I worked in advertising for 5 years,
That's right.
and
That's right.
um, you have to have thick skin, and you're going to get told all the time that something's bad, and you're going to start from scratch a lot. And
Oh,
so I've had to live that long enough to where it doesn't really affect me, and I kind of
sure.
expect it and sometimes welcome it. I mean, I have a lot of friends that are designers that I'll share stuff with all the time and get feedback, and so that's really just part of the deal.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Is there one particular? I don't know.
It's just as far as work I've done.
Yeah, like, has there just been one where you've just like worked with somebody and you're just like it's really turned you off to working with that person, or like when you receive criticism, like the difference between like constructive and then just like flat out being, just being a piece of shit about it,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's not necessarily one. I mean, that stuff does happen.
Yeah.
I've worked with artists who, um, had me do a bunch of work on album cover and then sort of disappeared and never got paid and never got used or
Oh
anything,
shit,
and
really?
that sucks. Um, I've done, several concepts for an album, and then the band decides that they have an idea that you then sort of have to execute. And so
Hmm.
you're less offering your ideas and stuff, and you're more executing another person's idea. So it's
I
kind of
see.
hard to put your name on that and associate yourself with it so
Because it's
much.
not really like something that came from your mind. It's like you're just kind of putting pen to paper for somebody else's
Yeah,
idea. Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
there's stuff like that, and then but the one in particular, they were on a record label, and
Hmm.
so I kind of had to strike a balance where um, I'm gonna put it in my portfolio still,
Yeah.
because like, it wasn't horrible, but it didn't feel like it had a whole lot of me in it. But it's a little bit more visible because it's on a label and stuff like that, and so
Yeah.
you kind of have to walk a fine line there sometimes.
Interesting. Huh.
But that's part of the deal when you're a designer versus an artist and you're helping other people, because at the end of the day, like, you're making something for them, you're helping them get somewhere, and so you sort of have to take a back seat sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's everybody's different.
And what are some just to balance the bitter with the sweet? Like, like what would you say are one of your like favorite artistic projects you've worked on with maybe like a band or something of that sort?
Um, well, let me think about that for just a sec. There's a band I worked with called Roncata Trio, and
Mm-hmm.
their members are split between Wichita, Kansas, and Lawrence, Kansas.
Oh,
And
where's
they're
Lawrence? Is that just a bit?
Lawrence is, yeah, it's like 2.5 hours northeast, a little bit closer to
Okay.
Kansas City.
Okay.
It's a college town. Um, they're kind of more of like an experimental jazz band.
Hmm.
There's a guy here who's one of my friends is in the band, but
Mm-hmm.
I did their album cover a couple years ago, and that's one of my favorites that I've done.
Okay.
Just for whatever reason, like they kind of had a general idea, and then I helped realize it,
I
and it
see.
turned out really great, and everybody loved it. I loved it, and the band loved it, so that was fun.
That's awesome.
Um, and then there are a couple of bands that there's a band here called Vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like an alternative rock band. Um, I've done all of their album covers. Um, I'm friends with them, and they keep coming back to me, just like Kyle on the Coma Calling. I've done all of
Oh yeah.
his,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
whether or not that's like your favorite thing you've ever done or anything, the relationship is the most important part of that.
I see.
It's really great to have those.
I see.
Yeah.
And how is that? How has that been? Like, have you like with respect to the like the art and I guess even the music? Have you like performing or doing your music as Scattered Lodges? Have you been fortunate to come across a handful of people who kind of imbue you with knowledge as to what to do? I know Kyle produces music, so I'm guessing he helps you, or he's pretty good to talk to about that stuff. But have you met some real cool people through that project as well?
Um, yeah. Met a few people, and I guess my friends like Kyle are the most important. Like
Yeah,
people that I know really well, like they're the ones I'm going to take something to and be like, hey, what do you think of this? And
sure.
I'm really going to listen to them. But um, definitely Kyle. He's like the first person that I go to on anything related to music, because I consider him like the expert way above me. He's done it longer. He sort
Yeah,
of lives it and breathes it more than me. And
for
so,
sure.
yeah, it's good to have people, someone's voice who you really value and trust.
Of course, yeah. And have you? I guess I glazed over this for whatever reason. Have you taken Scattered Lodges into a live setting before? Or have you considered doing that?
I have not done it. I haven't really considered it. To
Okay.
me, it's just more of like a studio thing, for lack of a better
Okay.
word.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not out of the realm of possibility someday, but it's not really in the foreseeable future.
Okay.
I think probably because it's more of a personal endeavor when I'm making it. You
Sure.
know, it's never really intended to be played live or anything like that, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility.
Okay. Okay. I think that covers it for my questions, but I don't know if I glazed over anything that you think that I should be asking, or you just think, if I stupidly looked over something.
I
Because
don't
there.
know. I think I'm good.
Okay.
Can't really think of anything. Hopefully, that all made sense.
Oh yeah, to me, dude. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's no that it's always a pleasure just like being able to speak with folks about their music. And what I liked about this conversation too is we kind of delved more into like your art as well. And if there's anything on your art that you want to discuss further too, because because you have
Well, you mentioned like metal
yeah.
album covers and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and um, what popped into my mind when you mentioned that is that I think with a lot of that genre is so formulaic,
Hmm.
like the music itself, but also like when you see a metal album cover, a lot of time, like it's definitely a metal album cover, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder if it's like doing itself a disservice in a way.
Yeah,
Um,
almost like it's kind of like yeah, it kind of like brands itself that way, and it's just like, oh, that's just another generic whatever. I'm not going to listen to that or something of that sort.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That stuff that always stands out to me. Um, Sometimes I'll put together just little collections of album covers I find that are sort of like trends that I'll kind of spot.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I actually did one recently with a bunch of metal albums where like the imagery is definitely like it's the illustration is like definitely a metal illustration, but then the band logo is in the top right or top left. And it just seems
Oh,
like sometimes people do that just because like you're supposed to, because
interesting.
obviously it's a metal album.
Yeah, yeah, but
Um,
that's like a little project that you did or something like that. Like you kind of were picking, like you're like, oh, let's look for all these different, like a very specific template in like a
yeah,
metal. Oh, huh.
yeah, and I don't really do a lot with it. Sometimes I just do it for myself. But I know I got an email from like Death Wish Records, and I
Oh,
was looking through it, and there were two albums side by side that just looked identical at a glance, and they were totally different bands, but the illustration just looked like a metal thing, and the logos were in the exact same spot.
what is
And
it? What? Yeah. So, but what is? I guess from your perspective as like an artist who produces, you've produced album artwork. Like, what does that tell you about? Because you listen to metal, but but you produce the stuff as well. You're not. I mean, you're more than just the like a consumer. Like you do, like you produce stuff. Not maybe not in the hemisphere of metal, but what is
yeah,
it? What does that tell you when you're looking for new metal bands or looking at records?
I mean, it tells me I've heard it before,
Yeah.
and that's probably judging a book by its cover, but still, the record cover has a lot of responsibility, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, it just tells me I've heard it before. So I think of things like um, Sunbather by
Like the Deaf Heaven one.
yeah. I mean
Yeah.
that is not in a million years would you assume that's what type of music that is,
No, and maybe
and
they did
like
that
I think
intentionally. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. Like I read about that album cover one time, and like
Oh.
the idea behind it was like the cover, the color is what you see when you stare into the sun with your eyes closed. And it's just sort of
Ah.
this like pinkish, orangish gradient thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of a bright, colorful thing with white type on it, and you don't think like black metal or whatever.
No,
But
no.
there's like an actual idea behind it that's really great.
That's interesting. Yeah, and people pass off that record so quickly as like they're like, oh, that's just hipster metal. It's just like, God damn, I fucking hate when people say crap like that. Like they
Yeah,
just instantly categorize it as such. And I actually didn't know that about the album artwork though.
yeah, and it's like I don't know, do people pass it off because it doesn't look right or it doesn't look like it
Yeah.
should look or something like that? I mean, I wonder how many people do that, because they're not sticking to the confines of something.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting that you bring that up, and that's something I haven't really thought about, just kind of like the general template of an album cover and what idea or what message it communicates to you subliminally when you listen to so much of it, over the years.
Yeah.
Do you see like a way, like, are you hoping to see like a trend away from that, or is there like you obviously say you appreciate Sunbather in that sense for it kind of going against your expectations, but like you personally as an artist, do you maybe see a way to try and subvert people's expectations with some of the art you produce, or is there like something you may want to do in the future with bands where you kind of make something different just to kind of throw people off? Like, is that something you value as an artist?
Yeah. I mean, I value things like that, like when it's uh, I don't know if it's appropriate. I value that, but
Sure, sure.
really, I think I don't know. There's different ways to approach it. Like with a lot of like templated, trendy stuff, it's a way for people to see something and know that it's for them. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you
Mm-hmm.
are into metal and you see a metal cover, like you can tell right away, like that's probably for you. Or even like hip hop, that genre has its own way of doing that stuff.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
so it does hook people in, but the risk right there is that you have to be able to back it up.
Kind of meet those
Like
expectations
yeah, I
almost.
mean your
Yeah.
cover like it talks the talk, but then you have to like walk it.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
so I think ideally what's going to happen is the cover needs to be paired with the music. So if like you find a cover, maybe it catches your eye, maybe not, maybe you hear the music before you see the cover, but like they should work together. Like they're two halves, I think. And so at the end of the day, it should be like this complete thing. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that's when it's the most successful. But I mean, everybody's different. Everybody has different needs. Whether it's just to be visible or just to do something crazy to catch people's eye.
Sure. And have you personally gone about, say, with metal records or any other? This may be kind of an inane question, but have you gone about being like, oh, I see this album cover, and you have like a certain expectation, you're just like totally let down by the actual sounds that you hear when you listen to it, or you're just like, oh, this is just crap? Like, does that happen frequently?
Yeah, it totally happens frequently. And then sometimes you'll randomly play something because you see it, like in Spotify or something,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and it blows you away. But man, you hate looking at the cover.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is a strange thing because I don't particularly, like the don't judge a book by its cover. Like, yeah, like that was kind of hammered into my skull when I was younger. But as I've been kind of listening to more music and trying to cover bands and listen to stuff that's kind of outside my comfort zone, I don't want it to sound like the worst thing, but sometimes I kind of have to judge books by its cover, like just to save time almost. Like there are just certain genres of music where you're just like, that just looks like crap and it's probably going to sound like that as well. And I
Yeah,
just don't want to waste my time listening to it. Like that happens with like a lot of, uh, like gore grind and like just like certain genres where you're just like it just like it almost seems like misogynistic or something. You're just like I don't want to have anything to do with that.
yeah,
Like
yeah. I mean that's like I think everybody does that, but it's like why
yeah.
have a book cover
Yeah.
if it's not going to do something for you? Why have an album
Yeah.
cover? Like it should be doing something for you.
Sure.
So if it's turning people off, something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. No, that's interesting though that you bring that up because that's something that I've never even thought about per se or like thought about it deeply enough. And having you as somebody that creates or has created album artwork, that's an interesting perspective to
Yeah,
get. And are you?
and I
Yeah.
think sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
you're
I
fine.
think you mentioned a lot of people don't really care about that stuff, and it's definitely true. And I think it doesn't
Yeah.
help that cause um, when like the visual side of things doesn't get a lot of love or a lot of care put into it. It doesn't help
Yeah.
that people don't care about that stuff because like all I I always look around album covers. I always just scour the internet trying to find great ones and just kind of keep my eye on things. And it's surprising to me how infrequently the artists are like the designers or artists are credited. It's
Yeah,
very, very, very infrequent.
that's something that I'm glad you said that because I found plenty of albums where I was like, man, this is some great shit, and I can't find the artist anywhere. It's like you have to just dig and dig and dig, and sometimes it's like it's never revealed. And like, why do you squander people's work like that?
Yeah,
Um,
it's a big bummer, and it's like uh, the band members don't get that treatment. Where like the engineer, whoever mastered it, or the
that's
record
right.
label, or
That's right.
all that
Yeah.
stuff. And yeah, I don't know. It's really weird. It makes me want just sometimes wonder why
Yeah.
it doesn't. It's not that important to some people.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it's strange because, and I think the album artwork generally has a lot to say. And even if, like, there are certain bands where I'll buy an album based on the artwork alone, I don't even know what it sounds like because I'm just like, oh, that looks awesome, and I just pick it
Yeah,
up, and then I'm sometimes just blown away by it.
right.
Like the guy who did my artwork for the compilation, I found him on Bandcamp randomly, and somebody's like, "Oh, we have 3 LPs left of this album by this grind band," and I was like, "Oh, I like grind," but I just saw the album cover, and I was like, "I have to have that album. Like, I just have to have it because like the art was so well done,
Yeah,
and it's just like it's phenomenal record." But he
yeah,
was credited, yeah.
yeah. That's where it becomes like the synergy. Like everything works, and it's just great. Like the whole
Yeah.
package is great.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the music matches the artwork. Like it kind of puts you in like kind of like the ambiance or like the world that it kind of creates with the artwork, and you kind of can like, it kind of creates like another level of immersion that you really, like I don't know. It's they're just
No,
so
that's
yeah.
exactly the way it is. I mean, and that's what anytime I do album art, like I'm hoping to contribute to that. I mean, even if A Perfect Circle was my favorite band in the world,
Yeah.
I just don't even know that I could buy that record. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's just like there's stuff that's good and you like it, and there's stuff that's okay, and there's stuff for like, man, I don't even want it. I don't even want to look at it.
Yeah, no, I'm. It's funny that you brought that up because I never really listened to that band all that much. I've listened to them a bit, and I'm like, yeah, they're all right. Like, but when I saw that album artwork, I was like, what the hell were they? Like, what were they thinking when they put that one together? That was, yeah,
Because if you're listening to the music, and I mean, someone like me, like I'm just constantly gonna have that picture
yeah,
in my mind when I'm listening to the music, and
yeah.
man, it doesn't really like do them any favors.
But like how you mentioned that thing with or that mentioned that insight with Sunbather, like that just you noting that alone kind of elevates the sounds for me more now that I know that. Just like thinking back, being like, oh, that's like you know the color or like the hues you see when you close your eyes. It's just like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. Like it kind of
Yeah,
adds value to the sound. It's not just some shoegazy black metal.
yeah. Well, and it's hard because like that's not common knowledge. Like I had to read an article. I can't even remember. That album's kind of old now, but I don't even remember where I
Hmm.
read it. But like I read an article with the guy who designed the cover, and he talked about it. And if you don't stumble onto something like that, you never really know, and you might make an incorrect judgment on
Yeah,
something like that because you don't know the story. And I don't know what to do about that
yeah,
sometimes. Like a lot of bands will talk about why the record sounds the way it sounds, and like why they made the guitars sound the way they did and stuff like that.
yeah,
And it really helps to form that whole picture. And
yep,
I guess like I wish people talked more or just as much about like the artwork and stuff like that, or just like the promotional materials around it, the whole thing, the whole
interesting.
world.
Yeah.